Looks like I'm live. And I'm a few seconds early. It's kind of rare. Okay, 7 o'clock. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm really happy to be doing another one of these live broadcasts. I'm going to make sure that you can hear me. Cool. Okay, Jeff just popped up and said he could hear me and that it looks good and sounds great. Exactly. So obviously you can see me, the lighting's okay, you can see my guitar and you can hear what I'm doing. So welcome. I'm Kelly Richey and I'm going to be with you for the next hour. And let me tell you some things that I'd like to cover tonight. One, building a connection with your guitar. I've taught a really long time and I'm finding more and more with students that it's one thing to learn how to play, see the neck of your guitar, learn songs, learn how to play leads. But it's another thing to really connect with each and every note. Your fingertips, your pick, your fingers that you can use here, working your volume knob. And yes, effects are really, really important. And I love effects. I'm a gearhead. But I'd like to pretend tonight like you're just plugging straight into an amp and you've got a little bit of overdrive, whatever you need. And what can you get out of this guitar? So I want to talk about that. And then I also want to make sure I have a 8-week series that now is just it's a Foundry course, but it's broken down into 8 segments called Building a Strong Blues Foundation. A lot of times people can play lots of things, they know lots of stuff, but the dots don't connect because there's holes in their understanding. So I want to make sure that we kind of cover a lot of the foundational things, since everybody can, chat and hit me with a message and ask questions. That would be, a really good time to do it. Let's see, visualizing the neck of the guitar. I want to make sure that and this is part of building a strong foundation, but in visualization, being able to see your bar chords, your pentatonics, the cage system, and that's something that you can just look at the neck of your guitar and it's there. Because like if I were to ask you your phone number, I say, hey, give me your phone number and I'll give you a ring, and you're like, it's 51. I'm going to worry. Now, granted, we have, speed dial where we don't know anybody else's phone number, but your email address. So what's your email address? If you had to look that up, be like, that's a little odd in this day and age. So you don't have time to think on here. You've really got to be able to have this in your DNA, all of the basics. Never underestimate the basics, okay? And then we're going to look at different techniques. And finally, one thing that I've really been using with my students is my 50 licks squared. How we break the neck down in one box that we find in 5 different areas, okay? And so you can play, if you know one lick in one area, you can play it in 5 different areas. In each of the different areas, it takes on a different characteristic. Okay, so New Jersey. All right, we're getting people in from all over the place. More light. Well, hopefully you can see the neck of my guitar. I've got on a black shirt up against a black backdrop and black pants. So, and actually, if you were to look in my closet, everything is black. There's black, black, black. So, and I have coffee with a little bit of cream, so it's not totally black. All right, I want to start with building a connection with your guitar. If we totally unplug the guitar, that's where we're going to find out what's in our hands. So I'm not going to turn all the way down, but things that I want you to try, like if we're going to play a pentatonic, I want you to try playing it and then using your pick, use your middle finger. by palm muting. Okay, now when you're playing, I'm on my lead pickup right now. Now I'm on my neck pickup. Notice how I'll make an intro to that note. So I'm using my hands vibrato. I'm using this guitar to really launch into a note. I'm just not. It's. So try playing as quiet as you can. Then at regular volume. A lot of times people don't realize the dynamics that they're playing their guitar with. They just kind of play every note, you know, kind of the same. So by really nuancing how you play just, you know, the basic stripped down guitar, if you got a lot of effects, from time to time, just plug straight into your amp, or maybe just a little overdrive pedal, and really make yourself play several hours a day if you can. You know, when you go into that play time, I always have my students practice, and I mean practice, just 20 minutes at a time. Then apply it, play and have fun, but don't confuse the two. But when you're in a mode of like actually want to pick up your guitar and play, keep yourself honest by stripping it down, taking away all of the crutches, and just seeing what your hands can bring to your guitar. Okay. Also, you know, by like I use a deluxe reverb when I play with the band. I play in stereo. I turn my bass all the way up and my treble halfway up. Now I for years have used two tube screamers on at the same time, so I got plenty of grit to bring in, and then as I back my guitar volume down, it'd clean it up. So by really building that connection with what just comes from your guitar in your hands is critical, because from there you're adding your effects, your sound, everything on top of that. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. Now, understanding the basics. When you look at the neck of the guitar, I always like to make sure that everybody knows, like the back of their hand, the names of the notes up and down their 5th and 6th strings. That's going to tell you what your bar chords are, and that's going to tell you what your pentatonics are. Because most people break down the pentatonics in 5 different patterns or shapes. I use 2, and I expand them. And if you watch the first live broadcast that I did, I talked a lot about that. I talk a lot about that in the classroom, because playing blues and blues rock, that's kind of the center of gravity. Playing a major or a minor, weaving those together, that would be kind of the, you know, the span, you know, that people typically bring to the blues. If you have songs that are a little bit more open, you can play what I call the 2 wild cards. If you want to bring any kind of your modal influence, then those extra 2 notes from each of your minor modes can really give a lift to a song and bring some melody. So make sure that you really understand your bar chords and your pentatonics. So this is what I call my root 6 basic, and then I expand it like this. All right, now I want to show you the boxes that I was talking about for my 50 licks, because I'm going to be applying different techniques to these things to make these boxes come alive. Because a long time ago, I realized when a student just sits and practices this forever, they get really bored and they lose interest with the guitar. So how can we learn these pentatonics and keep them interesting for ourselves, and build a bridge from the learning process into the playing process? Okay, so I'm gonna start with the key of A, and I'm gonna show you when I expand this. I put that note down there. Then I move these two notes up here. One thing I want to point out, when I move up the neck, I always move up with my third finger, period. Always move up with my third, and I always move down with my first. The last thing you want your fingers doing is, wow, what's she going to do this time? Okay, so you want to really train them. Now, if you get in a pinch and you've got to get out of something, well, you do whatever you have to. But as far as just moving around the neck of the guitar so you don't get in a pinch, okay? So that's one of your boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, up here, so this is my A, root 6. Up here I have an A, root 5. Okay. Now, I'm only going to have, because this is my root 5, I'm only going to have 2 of those 5-note boxes. Okay, so we've got 3 places. So see how you can take one common riff and play it in all 5 places? Okay, so I'm going to build that out as we progress in the series tonight. So let's look at some techniques now that I'm using. When I use a slide in and out of a note, for me, the slide is kind of like the glue. Okay, now I am experiencing the sun going down, and I am going to turn the slide up just a little bit. See if that helps. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so listen to how I use a slide to kind of connect everything that I'm doing. So what I was just doing there was a slide, a vibrato, and my right hand. As you watch everything that I play tonight, my right hand never stops. I find that people want to play time and try to make time happen. If you can just keep a nice down, up. Listen how I'm going down, up, 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 down, up. When I emphasize, all I'm doing is down, up, down, up, down, up. But by emphasizing those, it carves out my rhythm. Down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, 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 up, down. Now, I'm not always dragging the pick on the strings. Down, up, down, up, down, 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 up. See, I'm not doing that. Down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, down. Okay, so, but you've always got that motion, okay? And you want to make sure that your hand, your wrist, your arm, your shoulder, you want to make sure that everything is relaxed and that you've got a flow. So I'm gonna kind of in slow motion, and then watch for not necessarily even newer players, but especially if you haven't been playing that long, watch how I'm feathering. I'm just letting the pick fall down like a waterfall. I'm not holding on to this pick hard. I'm holding on, and I'm letting it fall. I'm not like, I'm going with it. I'm going with the grain. And then a lot of times when I'm playing really, I've got a wild right hand. It's one of my strongest points. As rhythmically, I get a whole lot of mileage out of my right hand that makes up for any speed that I don't have in my left hand. Okay, let me check in and see. Okay, where's a good place to start for the right hand? I would like to have that in the worst way. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. A lot of people that over the years, one of the biggest challenges that I find students have is rhythm. And I've seen some people really tackle rhythm that I was worried. It's like, wow, you know, how are we going to approach this and really make this fun, make this something that doesn't become an obstacle? Because, you know, guitar can be difficult. And in the first 6 months, usually, definitely the first year, it's kind of make or break if somebody's going to really get across that threshold. So I'm glad that I took lessons from the very beginning, because I probably would have gotten frustrated, but I had that guidance. So let's talk about rhythm. For one thing, every now and then, well, quite often people will not want to use a pick. They're like, but it's easier like this, and I'm more comfortable when I use a pick. It gets in my way. Classical playing with a pick. Johnny Winter used a thumb pick, and he was quite good. You know, so you know, I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, but when I teach someone, I'm not classically trained. I use my other fingers a lot, but I never set down a pick. I just don't. I've never been good at finger picking. I can get by, you know, I can fake it, but it's not a very deep well. So if you aren't comfortable with a pick, carry it around for 30 days. Don't set it down. Just carry it around. Okay, never underestimate what that can do. Also, from your pick, whenever I use my other fingers, I need to get this pick between my middle finger and my first finger. So you want to just, when you're holding your pick, carrying it around, just get comfortable with putting it where you're going to use it and where you're going to keep it out of the way. Then the first thing I want you to practice is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And notice I'm not sitting still when I'm doing this. I'm feeling every beat. My foot's tapping and I'm bouncing to it. Then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Because you're going to have to, if you're going to play with a lot of authority and really wild, you're going to have to get used to holding on to this pick and being flexible with it. Okay. So again, I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, but then I'm going to emphasize and add 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to do 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. And you're going to emphasize the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. Okay, playing that back and forth. Put on some metronome's fine, but if you've got, you know, some good loops, some good grooves, that would be ideal to play to, because it's going to be more inspirational. All right, so then you can start down, up, down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, down, down. Okay. From there, I'm going to show you the Stevie Ray. But to really have a right hand that can be used, you have to be able to mute and cover yourself. You have to be able to cover yourself, because if you don't want to be tiptoeing around. You want to give your right hand freedom. So okay, so up, down, up, down, up, down. Learning to mute can be really frustrating. The practice that I'll have people go through is taking your pentatonic and playing each note. And this isn't about playing, this is about practicing. You just need to do this a few minutes a day. But I want you to start seeing, you know, to mute each and every note, it has a different feel. Look how my hand looks there, as opposed to muting a note up here. See? But you first have to learn how to mute, and that can be really frustrating. But stick with it, you'll get it, okay? My middle finger, all of my fingers tend to just kind of, especially these three, they just lay down on the neck. I'll pick these up as I need that. I use my thumb for leverage and for strength and power. So you have to get that flat tire, and you've got to be able to mute. Okay, Now somebody, it's Forrest, one of my students. How do I emphasize one for 16th notes? So I think I understand the question. So if you're like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, you slow it down. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. You've got to slow everything down to really get on top of it, okay? So, okay, let me look at some questions. Frustrating to say the least. Yes, it is. I've been playing maybe 7 or 8 years. Stevie Ray, been on the scene, and you know, in my mind, I thought, you know, Voodoo Child, he's this great hot player, and I didn't really realize songs like Couldn't Stand the Weather, that you know, where there's just that funky feel. There's a slight difference between funk and flat tire. The mechanics are the same. So if you've got and it's where you put the emphasis, okay? So when Forrest was asking, you know, how do you emphasize, like shift your weight, emphasize a note, for all of the practicing that we do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 1 E and a 2 E, you know, while you're doing that, make sure that you're feeling the pulse. I can't emphasize that enough. If you jump into 16th notes before you really get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and get a mirror and practice in front of it. I see people, no matter how many times I say make sure you move, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. You've got to move. You've got to feel it. Again, building connection with your guitar. If you're not feeling every note, playing every single note, getting everything out of every note that you can, then you're not going to move people. You're not going to draw people in. You're not going to feel that freedom. You know, to really get emotion out of one note is so much more thrilling for me as a player than playing a whole bunch of notes. Now, to play a bunch of notes and really put that, you know, the emphasis when that really takes root, and that's what makes a lead come alive. So some things that you can do when you're practicing is, you know, like you can, like, let's just take an example of this. Or you can begin to animate now. Let's take one note for a second so I can show you how I'm animating each one of these notes, because really, you know, in blues and blues rock, we've got 5 notes to work with. What are we going to do with them? You know, well, a drummer's got a 5-piece drum kit. All right, kick, snare, maybe 2 rack toms and a floor tom, maybe just a 4-piece kit. Think of what all rhythmically that can be done. Think of a drummer doing a drum solo. So if you take these notes and breathe rhythm into them, don't worry about playing a lot of hot licks. Those are things that you're going to learn. How are you going to tie them together so it doesn't sound like just a bunch of licks? Okay, you really want to get that foundation to where you're moving smoothly with a rhythmic feel. So you've got a groove happening. Then you can down, 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 down. You know, you can start playing all kinds of, you know, fancy stuff on the top 3 strings. But how do you get up there? So let's apply this rhythm to one note. So we've looked at the muting, we've looked at, you know, how to build that foundation for rhythm. And that's the only exercise I use with people. If you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, that's all you need. Then you just emphasize 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And then it's breathing life into the basics. Okay, so try to not make it rocket science, because it's not. It's just building the simple stuff. Okay, so we're gonna, you know how if you've had on a song and everybody's played air drums and somebody's walked in the room and it's like busted, you know, and you're laying into it. I want you to pretend like you're playing air drums on here as far as beat wise with your right hand. Just mute everything and just get up. Just get a rhythm going. And I see some questions in here. I'll get to these in just a second. So just get a rhythm going. Don't worry about playing a single note. Then we're going to play one note. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is, and I'm just going to keep a pattern of my own going here. My right hand is not doing anything different. It's where I'm pushing down, da, 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 almost like Morse code. Da, 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 da. So even when then I can start adding some. So if you work with one note, once you get control of your rhythm, once you get things muted, then before you start trying to take that all over the neck, because somebody in here was saying that that's really frustrating. It is. But if you can master it one place, then you know what it is that you're trying to move around. And it does feel different. Somebody was asking about the top 2 strings. Okay, how do you mute when playing a shuffle pattern interspersed with the top 2 strings? You kind of don't. That's where you tiptoe around. That's where, like, watch if I go. Let's see, I'll just do a flat tire. Now, I got it that time, but that's where it starts getting tricky, because you're down here. there's not a lot your thumb can do, and your fingers are all attached, so it's not like your middle finger can get up there. So how you use your right hand, sometimes it looks like I'm going up and down, but sometimes my up and down is more like that at an angle, as opposed to this. It'll get smaller instead of this. So I'm at least not taking out all the strings and making a big mess. So as opposed to, okay, so that's one thing, but it's always going to be tricky to mute on those top two strings, you know, because you run out of real estate. It's just that plain and simple. Just like when you play sweet notes, now you can get them down here, but you got to work harder. I got them. But if you were first learning how to play sweet notes and you were trying to do them down here, you might never get them because you're probably not going to find them there. Once you learn how to really master them, then when you try to play them in the harder spots, they will pop through. You know, I claim to be blues. I'm really blues rock. One of my big influences when I first got a guitar was Eddie Van Halen. I didn't play a lot of Van Halen. I didn't play a lot of Stevie Ray, but I sure listened to them, and I picked up, you know, I stole what I could and brought it into the style that I was developing. And Eddie Van Halen used pinch harmonics all over the place. He didn't do it like somebody like Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top. He played a lot faster than Billy Gibbons. So those, you know, he would, really use the pinch harmonics to kind of poke a hole in it, to really make things stand out. The master, one of my favorite guitar players, so I think he's just the greatest thing and everything, but Roy Buchanan. And there's, how many people out there know who Roy Buchanan is? If you don't, go on YouTube and check out Roy's version of Hey Joe. It was recorded. There's a live video of him doing Hey Joe in '77, I think it was, on Austin City Limits. It's out of this world. He is the master of a Telecaster. He is a master of dynamics. So there you can see, and he played a fairly clean guitar, just some overdrive, every now and then some delay. But so that's the other extreme of really milking a guitar and its tone, as opposed to someone like Van Halen that really processed or very overdriven guitar, because he played through a Marshall with like a flanger. Early on it was that real pure tone, but also the way that it was recorded with reverb and panning and everything, it made that guitar sound huge. So taking these muting right hand techniques and making one note come to life, that's one approach as far as foundational. Beginning to use your middle finger. I see something for female guitars. I'll get to that in just a second. Now, my middle finger is like my middle finger and my thumb, my middle finger and my pick. Like if I want to do octaves, I'll use my thumb and middle finger with my pick out of the way. But I'm using my middle finger. I can get from just whisper quiet. And I anticipated note. That anticipation before it, okay? It's another form of almost like the inverse of your flat tire. So, let's see. Palm muting with the right hand, okay, and then advice for beginning and intermediate female guitarists. Being a female guitarist, one, I think for a girl, I have a very male approach. When I first started playing, people just flat out said girls can't play guitar. And there wasn't a lot of evidence that they did, you know, so I couldn't say, well, look at her, look at her. They're, you know, they had a point at that time based on the proof that they had. So I really had to prove myself. So I gained a real aggressive attack on the guitar. I developed a real aggressive attack. With that said, my hands for a girl are pretty big. I remember meeting Nancy Wilson. We opened for them not too long ago in Hart, but years ago when I was still in high school, I met her, and when I went to shake her hands were tiny. I remember saying to her, it's like, wow, you play the guitar like you do with those hands. She was very petite. And if you look at the style that she plays, I mean, she's a great guitar player. And the acoustic, notice she played an Ovation a lot. That has a smaller neck, kind of a real streamlined neck, more like an electric guitar. But she wasn't, you know, up there playing Jimi Hendrix and beating the guitar and everything. Now, she, you know, beat the daylights out of an acoustic. But she had a different approach. So everybody's got their own personality. So whether you have small hands, she's a good example of what can be done, or if you have bigger hands, like someone like myself, we're still not as strong as guys. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not going to beat many guys in arm wrestling, no matter how much I lift weights. But you'd be surprised. It's not so much that sheer force as it is the fine muscle tuning and strengthening. So this is an exercise that I have everybody do, where you open your hand, your left hand, all the way, close it all the way, and do this, build up to where you can do it at least 300 times. This is sometimes the only strengthening exercise that I do. Now, I do have 10-pound dumbbells, and I'll curl them on the tips of my fingers, curl them up like that. I'll do like 50 reps of that. And if 10 pounds are too heavy, do not use 10 pounds. If you ever feel pain in anything you're doing, playing, you know, sitting, playing in your shoulder, if you feel sharp pain, stop, get up, move around, shake it out. Sharp pain's bad. Burn, that's good. So doing those kind of curls, and then with your arms at a 90-degree angle, use dumbbells, and this male and female, use dumbbells and twist like this, keeping your arms at a 90-degree angle. And I use 10 pounds, and I'll do that 50 to 100 times. That really builds up your forearms, okay? And then with your left hand, open it and close it. Usually people start doing this after about 20 or 30. Open it all the way and make a tight fist. Open it and close it, and don't stop. And it's going to burn. You know, people say, oh, I can do that. It's like, you know, that I've never had anybody do it longer than me, ever. You know, so that is a great exercise to build up the fine muscles that you have in your hand. Then, you know, I think everything else is pretty much a level playing field. I do find that guys have more strength when it comes to bending. Now, I can bend, I think, as well as any of the guys out there, but there's a little bit more finesse that guys seem to be able to bring to some of the bends. And I don't think it takes as much effort for them to bend. So, you know, there is the realistic, you know, there's some differences between us that you can't get around. But everything that I feel is special about my guitar style, and everybody has their own unique special guitar style. Everything that I developed that is my strongest point, it was a workaround from something I couldn't do. Whatever it was, like I'd try to do something, it's like, man, I can't do that. Like there's things that Hendrix would do. His fingers must have been, you know, 10 inches long. His hands were huge. It's like some of that stuff is like, I can't do that. So what can I do? You know, how can I take something that I can't and find a way to work around it? Okay. So always be looking at things, especially in the learning stages. You're gonna find things that are hard. Get some help where you need it, and then don't freak out if there's things that you just can't do. Find something good that comes out of your effort, though. Okay. Just to let everybody know, and Jeff put that link in here, I do private lessons. They have, you know, one-offs that you can sign up for a single lesson. I've also got a classroom. I love to teach. I've done it almost as long as I've played the guitar. After about 18 months, I started teaching. I'm a passionate teacher, and so I'm here to help. And I've had some people say that, you know, I'm just going to practice a little while before I start taking lessons. I think lessons can be intimidating. I remember when I first started teaching, you know, girls didn't play the guitar. They'd sign me up in the, you know, I worked at a music store, and they'd, you know, whoever called in, they'd put them on one of our schedules. And sometimes these guys would come in, it's like, a girl, you know, that was kind of fun. But I'm there to help. I'm there. I like to help people with their technique and with getting the foundation and learning how to play this thing where you have fun, because it's not rocket science. It's work. And if you have a really good practice routine that is inspiring and not like, oh, man, I dread practicing. That's why I like to have people practice 20 minutes at a time. And if you're going to practice 6 hours a day, great. Practice 20 minutes and play for 40. Okay, balance the two out, and then don't confuse the two, because if you're thinking when you're playing, it's going to sound like it. You want to practice, get repetition down to where it's in your DNA. Whenever I'm playing something, if it's like, oh, I stumbled, I stop right there. I play it until I can play it 12 times without any flaw. Then I've got it. So let's see. Favorite scales for the blues, pentatonic, but how you spice that up. So if you're playing blues, and if I'm in the key of A, so here it is expanded. That's root 6, and here's root 5, and here it is expanded. So, you know, I've got my boxes, but I can also, in more traditional blues, they'll weave major and minor pentatonics in. So if this is my minor, then here would be my major. And if I expand it, so when I go up here, this box up here in my major pentatonic lays right over top of my minor pentatonic. Minor, major, major, minor, major, minor. So weaving those back and forth, but really mastering your pentatonics And depending on when you tuned in, if I take this, I've got those five note boxes. That's in my root 6. And then in my root 5, I've got 2 of them. So anything that you do, any lick that you learn can be repeated in any of those 5 boxes. Now, if you're playing a lead, you don't want to sit and repeat one lick over and over. But that one lick that you've learned, it can be played anywhere. Okay, let's see. Yes, you know, there's when I first got a guitar, one of the first real breakthroughs I had as a lead player, there was a guitar solo by Ace Frehley of Kiss. It was a song called She, and it was on their live record. He took that one lick and he moved it up 1 fret at a time until he was all the way up here. And he was just flying by the time he got up there. So I sat and worked with that, and that gave me the mechanics. So okay, thinking while playing, when you if you have to think to play, you're going to know it, and so is anybody listening. They're at least going to feel it. So the way that you keep, it's one thing to like, okay, where am I going to head next? Like, what am I going to do? Not how am I going to do it? Or, oh, there comes that part. Whenever there's something that you tense up, stop what you're doing and practice that, okay? Because you have to get this stuff in your DNA, period. You can't make that up. No matter what you do, it has to just flow like water. So take one thing, the flat tire. Any concept that you're doing, you want to take it and you want to apply it until you own it. Okay? And anything that's difficult, break it down. Like when I was learning that, well, I had to learn to bend first. So every single thing in the solo, I'm going to play along with the track for you. Now, we'll talk about some stuff that Now, for one, it's this note, then it's bent. So that's 2 notes. There's 1, 2, 3. So you don't want to sit there until you got it. And you don't want to. And you want to bend up slow until you've got it in tune. And if you wiggle around, then you've got that grace. For bending, when it's slightly out of pitch, it's probably one of the worst things in the world for somebody to have to listen to. It just, and getting your bends in pitch and then pulling it off when you're playing, it's really difficult. So you've got to really focus on those. So you're bending up a whole step. And sometimes a lot, I'll see students trying to bend with their first finger or second finger. Like if I'm doing something like that, okay, but whenever I'm doing just a standard bend, I always use my third finger with my second finger as support. And I mute. And then all I'm doing is from my E minor pentatonic with my pinky right there. Now, one thing that I want to emphasize before we have to go, when you're playing, you kind of got to make a mess of things and not be afraid of that. And then learn how to clean it up. Because if you tiptoe into this thing, you're never going to quite get there. It's like, oh, I'm afraid to hit a note wrong, or I'm afraid it's sloppy. Just get in there and roll around in the mud and figure out how to clean it up. It's all going to come from muting. And then palm muting. Watch my right hand. I have control over this thing. One, my hand's always open, and I know where that bottom string is. And on my Strat, I know where that pickup is. So I'm in touch with this. And I mute as I need to. So it's a combination of muting with my palm and muting with my fingers, okay? All right. How can I develop light touch? Light touch. Feather the strings. Get used to that. And then take a song and play it light. That'll make you have control. Strum, root, strum, root, strum, root, strum. Play it nice and soft. Learning how to play things really, really soft. And then harder, going between the two, really helps you to develop control. Okay? All right, so we're at our last minute. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. Again, I have Classroom on TrueFire. I'd love to work with you. I do one-off lessons on TrueFire, and then I give lessons on Skype. If you go to kellyrichey.com, you'll see my website. And at the top, you can click on my Facebook page, and you can find my YouTube page. I've got a million videos of live performances. So you'll see some of these techniques well, you see a lot of these techniques in play over, I think I've probably got 150 videos up. Lots of live performances. So check this stuff out in action. And, if you'd like to work together, I'm here, and I enjoy, I'll give you everything I got. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you all so much. And I think that's it. Okay. Stick with it because you can do it. All right. All right. Peace.